Here to break it all down is Seth Schachner. He is Managing Director at Strat Americas. Seth, it's great to have you on the show.
Good to be here.
Now tell me about how does this Universal Spotify deal reshape the music industry's 2.0 model?
It's actually really interesting. Streaming saved this industry, and but to some degree has started to slow a little bit. And the economics have been, really, really one-sided and slanted in favor of rights holders. So I think anyone kind of in between rights holders and consumers, it's a really tough margin to make. And I think artists in general, just because of the increasing amount of content that's available on Spotify every day, are making less and less. And so there's a ton of other issues, but this deal, calling it Streaming 2.0, and it's really put forward by Universal Music Group first, because they're the biggest in the, in the label world and recorded music, is really an attempt to reshape all the economics around it. It's going to eliminate something that was, to put it bluntly, very obnoxious sort of term that Spotify put in place legally that really kind of squatted on songwriters, who are really the very essence of the music industry. And we'll improve that and get rid of that, and it's going to set the stage for a ton of other things like premium audio tiers and even things like fan clubs and merchandise, and at least hopefully in my view, higher pricing for streaming. So it's really the right move.
Yeah, let's drill down on those points that you just mentioned, especially with the new terms that are in place. Talk to me about the significance behind this deal specifically for artists and songwriters.
Yeah, so this new one impacts songwriters first and foremost, okay? And so I think it's fair to say that Spotify took an obnoxious legal strategy, basically, to classify themselves as something other than just a pure play music service, something that might think about maybe like a Sirius that has lots of other programming, which it does, but it essentially completely reduced the payments to the songwriters. So the new one eliminates the bundle, if you will, and Universal Music's publishing company, not the label, but the publishing company that works with songwriters, Bob Dylan, lots of other things that aren't Universal artists, cut a direct deal actually with Spotify. And that's actually pretty huge. I won't go through all the details of all the music intermediaries, but it bypassed them. So songwriters should basically make more money from this. And I think there's another aspect of this that I don't think has fully come into focus yet, but it's called the artist-centric model. And it's Universal's play to kind of change up the back-end pool, if you will, so that artists get paid more. And I think that will eventually come from it as well. So it's pretty groundbreaking stuff if you're looking at how the economics work of streaming for people other than the labels or Spotify.
And when it comes to subscriptions, do you really think that they are underpriced, and how could this deal lead to broader industry-wide pricing changes?
I do, for sure. I mean, you get everything under the sun from Tchaikovsky to Miles Davis and heavy metal for, what is it, $14. So if you just look at, out the landscape at Netflix and what they've done, they, raise prices typically each year, and they don't even lose subscribers from it. So, I mean, to me, 100%, it should be more. What's happened in Music Trinity is that artists now have a lot more independence than they used to. So this is also something where, if you think about, if you're a super fan, I don't know, of Oasis or Olivia Rodrigo, you might want to buy a t-shirt. You might pay extra to see one of the artists do something special for you. And if you think about the old school notion of really old music fan clubs, this is something digital that is super cool, that can be higher priced, that the money might go, most of it would go directly to the artist. So it's got a lot of stuff in there that can kind of change the way audiences interact with music, and it won't just be about sitting back and streaming anymore.
And will this deal become sort of the template for other major labels and streaming platforms? And how do you think this will impact the future of streaming negotiations?
Yeah, look, I was on the front lines of this for Sony for 11 years for Jive Records and Sony Latin, and part of that was being an independent or smaller labels, even inside Sony. And strategically, you're always going to wait for kind of someone else to land on the beach first, if you will, and establish all the terms and build structures by which all of your labels can kind of pass through. And that's called, legally, it's called setting a precedent. And so that's essentially what's happening here in my view. The biggest one of the big three labels is setting a huge precedent. So yeah, I believe it will happen throughout the industry. It might ripple through in different ways, but for sure, I mean, I think Universal's setting out a benchmark for it, and I think others will follow.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. Seth Schachner, Managing Director of Strat Americas.
Great to be here.